The Bicon surgical tray is made of surgical-grade plastic. All of the necessary Bicon instrumentation for surgical implant procedures can be stored and autoclaved in this kit. The instruments are organized in rows depending on their length and function. The kit contains 2 nesting modular trays which allow for storage of handpieces and larger instruments. There are 3 rows of latch reamers for the standard, mid-size, and long reamers, a 4th row of hand reamers, as well as a row of bone expanders and sinus lift osteotomes. Pilot burr. The pilot drill is the first surgical drill. It is a fluted twist drill with a very sharp point. Due to its design and functioning at 1100 RPMs, it should be replaced after approximately 25 osteotomy preparations. The pilot drill, as well as the reamers, are described by their width, color coding, and horizontal gradation marks, which correspond to the 8, 11, and 14 mm long Bicon implants, except for the 5.5 mm and 6.0 mm diameter reamers, whose markings are at the 6 mm and 8 mm lengths. Latch reamers. A reamer is a latch-type reamer when its shank is designed to be affixed to a latch-type handpiece. Latch reamers are available in 3 overall lengths: standard, mid-size, and long. Each titanium reamer is marked and color-coded according to its diameter. Latch reamers are designed to only cut at the apical third of their tapered tip to specifically widen an osteotomy without increasing its depth. In other words, they are not drills. The sides of the reamers are not designed to cut, but rather to guide the instrument along the walls of the osteotomy. They currently have horizontal markings corresponding to the 8, 11, and 14 mm long Bicon implant, except for the 5.5 and 6.0 mm diameter, which have markings at the 6 mm and 8 mm lengths. The 3 mm reamer starts to take the shape of an actual Bicon implant. It has markings at the 8, 11, and 14 mm lengths, with newer reamers having an additional marking at the 6 mm length. The 3.5 mm diameter latch reamer is similar to the 3 mm. The 4 mm reamer, which is similar to the 3 and 3.5 mm reamers and has a shape similar to the shape of 3 smaller diameter implants. The 4 mm reamer is a double cannon burr. In other words, it is comprised of 2 portions of a cylinder, which are diametrically opposed to each other. This shape guides the reamer down the walls of the osteotomy and makes it virtually impossible to change its direction or angulation once cutting is initiated. The 4.5 mm and 5 mm latch reamers are 3-fluted, which provides for less wobbling during the initial cutting. However, since they do not have a cylindrical portion, they can catch and damage a thin wall of soft bone if the operator is not careful. They are also marked at the 8, 11, and 14 mm lengths, with newer reamers having an additional marking at the 6 mm length. The 5.5 mm and the 6.0 mm latch reamers are also 3-fluted and are marked differently from the narrower diameter latch reamers. Since the longest Bicon implant, with a diameter greater than 5 mm, is 8 mm long, their markings are 6 and 8 mm. A latch extension provides clinical flexibility for latch reamers. Hand reamers. Hand reamers are designed with a threaded end, which when fastened to a threaded straight handle or threaded knob, can be used for preparing an osteotomy in soft bone when greater control is desired. The consecutive sizes of the hand reamers correspond in color as well as in markings to the latch reamers, and they are similar in architecture, except for the fact they have only one flute of a quarter cylinder cut out of their cylindrical shape, and thus they have only one cutting surface. The tip of the hand reamer is slightly beveled, with its leading edge slightly elevated, which, unlike the latch reamers, allows for minimal end cutting when apical pressure is applied to them. When a hand reamer is fastened to a hand reamer extender and used in a latch-type handpiece, care should be taken not to exceed 15 RPMs, since it will generate a significant amount of heat because of its cylindrical shape. A flat wrench is provided in the modular tray to unfasten hand reamers from their threaded components. Paralleling pins. Paralleling pins have angulations of 0, 15, and 25 degrees and are used to assess the angulations, inclination, as well as the location of an osteotomy. They have a 2 mm and a 2.5 mm diameter end, which allows for the use with either a 2 mm pilot burr or with a 2.5 mm reamer. Implant Inserter Retriever. The implant inserter retriever is available in two lengths for both the 2 mm and 3 mm implant wells. Clinically, the shorter length will often avoid interference from the opposing dentition, and the longer length will often avoid interference from adjacent teeth. Since all Bicon threaded instruments are interchangeable, the implant inserter retriever can be used with either a straight driver or a threaded knob, depending upon the clinical access to facilitate the insertion or removal of an implant from its osteotomy. The implant is held onto the post of the implant inserter retriever by friction. To disengage the implant from its post, the sliding sleeve is turned counterclockwise while the straight driver or threaded knob is held stationary. Seating tips. Threaded implant seating tips are designed to be fastened to a straight or offset driver and to fit loosely into the well of an implant. During their use, care must be taken not to distort the roundness of the implant well, since any distortion of a maxillary anterior implant well may result in a non-retentive abutment. Threaded tips can be used alone or with acrylic to facilitate the seating of abutments or integrated abutment crowns. Guide pins. Guide pins are available with two different shoulder heights for both the 2 mm and 3 mm implant wells. They are used to assess the implant's osseointegration and trajectory, as well as with a sulcus reamer to remove bony or soft tissue from the sulcus area over an implant. The guide pin with a taller shoulder height is intended for use with a sulcus reamer for deeply seated implants where it is desirable to preserve the 2 mm of bone immediately above the implant, since the intended abutment, such as the 5 mm by 6 mm stealth abutment, has a longer post beneath its hemispherical base. Sulcus reamers. Sulcus reamers are available with the 5 different diameters of 3.5, 4, 5, 6.5, and 7.5 millimeters, corresponding to the 5 diameters of permanent abutments. Sulcus reamers, after being fastened to either a straight handle driver or a threaded knob, are rotated on guide pins to remove the bone or soft tissue from the sulcus area over an implant to facilitate the seating of an abutment or an integrated abutment crown. Latch file. An endodontic file number 110 is used to remove the cut black polyethylene healing plug from the well of the implant with a hand twisting motion.
Healing plug removal instruments. The healing plug removal instruments are designed to facilitate the removal of the black healing plug from an implant well. By pressing its sharp end into the plug while twisting by hand or with a latch handpiece, the plug is withdrawn with a pulling motion.
Ridge-splitting osteotomes. Threaded ridge-splitting osteotomes are available for the straight driver in widths of 3, 5, and 6 millimeters. As their width increases, so does the angulation of their slope. Implant site dilator. The color-coded implant site dilators are available in 8 different diameters of 1.8, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, and 6 millimeters. Their horizontal markings correspond to the Bicon implant lengths of 8, 11, and 14 millimeters, with the newer dilators having an additional marking at the 6 millimeter length. After being fastened to a straight driver, they are tapped with a surgical mallet to widen an osteotomy in soft bone as an alternative rotary reamer fenestration of the osteotomy or loss of buccal bone. Sinus lift osteotomes. Osteotomes are available in diameters of 2.5, 3, 3.5, and 4 millimeters, with horizontal markings similar to the lengths of Bicon implants. They are used with a straight driver and mallet to infracture the bone floor of the osteotomy and of a maxillary sinus during the internal sinus lift procedure. This infracture allows for a bone graft placed at the floor of the osteotomy to be pushed by the seating implant to affect the elevation of the floor of the sinus. Straight driver. In addition to the direct tapping of an implant or an abutment with a variety of threaded tips, the straight driver is used in conjunction with the implant inserter retriever instrument and with the hand and sulcus reamers. Offset driver. The threaded offset or angle driver is used with a variety of threaded tips to seat an implant, abutment, or an integrated abutment crown in the posterior part of the mouth where direct access is difficult. Surgical mallet. The surgical mallet is used for the seating of implants and abutments, as well as with a variety of osteotomes. Dappen dish. A silicone dappen dish facilitates the collection and use of harvested bone and graft material. Shoulder depth gauge. Although the shoulder depth gauge was originally designed to be inserted into the well of the implant to indicate the height of the soft tissue above the implant relative to the shoulder height of a stealth abutment, it can also be used as an indicator of the relative position of any seated abutment. Soft tissue nipper. A small soft tissue nipper is designed to cleanly cut the post of the black polyethylene healing plug. Depth gauge and plugger. A depth gauge with markings of 8, 11, and 14 millimeters for measuring osteotomies. Newer gauges will have an additional mark at the 6 millimeter length. A bone plugger is designed with a hole to fit over the black healing plug in the implant in order to pack bone shavings over the shoulder of the implant. Prep holder. The abutment prep holder is designed to securely hold either 2 millimeters or 3 millimeter abutment parts while the abutments are being modified. It also serves as a handle for other instruments, such as the shoulder depth gauge. 18:1 handpiece. The 18:1 handpiece is designed with E-coupler and is used with a pilot burr for the preparation of the initial osteotomy at approximately 1,000 RPMs. 400:1 handpiece. The 400:1 handpiece is designed with an E-coupler and is used with latch reamers for widening the osteotomy at a maximum of 50 RPMs.
Impression reamers. Impression reamers are used only in conjunction with a regular length guide pin to facilitate the removal of bone over a deeply seated implant to assure clearance for the definitive seating of an impression post into the implant well. Extended guide pins. Extended guide pins are used only in conjunction with sulcus reamers when abutments with extended posts are being used to minimize the removal of bone over a deeply seated implant. Crown alignment device. The crown alignment device is designed to facilitate the fabrication of custom plastic seating jigs that are used to direct seating forces in the long axis of abutment posts and implant wells. Crown seating tip. The crown seating tip is designed to house a custom plastic seating jig during the jig's fabrication in a crown alignment device and during its use with a threaded straight handle to facilitate the seating of an integrated abutment crown or extraorally cemented crowns, especially for maxillary anterior restorations.